Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends. Thank you for joining us for another LinkedIn audio event. This time we're going to dive into, we've been talking generative AI. This time we're going to talk about it through the lens of finance and applications in finance. We have a very special guest joining us today to dive into use cases, the potential, the things he's seeing right now. So really excited about that. But before we welcome our special guest, we have another special guest. I don't know. Is he a guest? Is he a host? Is he a super developer evangelist? It's Micah Smith. Micah, how are you?
Gabe, I'm here. That's how I'm doing. No, I'm doing quite well. I just got back from doing a Pathfinder session in London, and so a bit jet lagged, but happy to be here and happy to have this conversation. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is the same area that our guest is from.
So are you guys hanging out at a cafe, like a cool barbecue joint or something, or what's going on?
Not yet, but maybe after this we will. We'll see.
Actually, I'm kind of hungry. Barbecue sounds good. So today we have, as I mentioned, a great topic. All of our events thus far, where we're diving into this, the hottest topic in the world, frankly, generative AI, ChatGPT, Google, Vertex, and the many solutions out there, the many models out there. So again, really excited to get to that. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody, we have a monster week next week. Next week is the Pathfinder Community Space Camp, and every day there's special events and special content being broadcast and shared with customers, with product experts, with community experts. Micah, it's going to be a really great week next week.
Absolutely. This is a really cool virtual event. This is the first time we've done this, so I'm super excited for it. But it's a combination of, learning about our product, learning about its application, and then also getting hands-on with stuff. And so we're going to have the bot games starting on Monday, May 1st. This bot game season is all about generative AI. And so we're super excited to introduce three of, I think, our most ambitious challenge pages yet, and see how people do being able to handle those, combining the power of automation anywhere with the power of generative AI. And so definitely excited for that. And then there's also a bunch of really cool keynote presentations that will be going on every day next week. And there's a slightly different theme for each day. So it's a great way to, upskill when it comes to automation anywhere, learn more about, career advancement and things like that with people who are getting their certifications. Lots of really interesting content coming up next week. If you go to community.automationanywhere.com, you can find all the details and be sure to register.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And in particular, on Monday, as you just mentioned, Bot Game Season 4, again, you've raised the bar. Can't wait to see our community out there with their solutions, sharing their solutions, posting their times. That's going to be really exciting. But also on Monday, we have an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, with two of our AI product leads, our head of AI product, Peter White, and Pratush Garkapati. So that AMA is going to be a Zoom, so it'll be interactive. And I highly encourage all of you to click the link. I think our producer Simon is putting in the comments to go register. It's going to be a really great event and must watch TV, but it's not TV, obviously. I'm showing my age again. All right, enough of the shameless plugging, although I don't think it's so shameless because I think it's going to be some really great stuff and a great experience next week. I want to now introduce our very special guest, and that guest is Mr. Ken Merzel, our global industry leader for financial services. Ken, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Excited to be joining you guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Like I said, I don't know if you and Micah have lunch plans after this, but if you do, I'm jealous.
We don't. We'll have to try to connect in Charlotte here. Sounds like today's sort of a warm-up for the exciting events next week.
Yeah, no, well, you get to tee it off, so who better to help do it? Ken, for those in the audience that don't know you and your background, tell us a little bit about your experience and what you're sort of up to here at Automation and helping customers and partners.
Sure. So I'm the global industry leader for financial services automation anywhere. I've been here about 4.5 years, and my role is really working with our customers to help them uh, identify how to apply the technology and intelligent automation, particularly in finance. My background has all been in industry prior to that. So most recently, I was at Bank of America for 15 years, half of that as CFO of the insurance group. Then I was in a variety of finance and risk management roles in consumer operations, and most recently reported the chief accounting officer managing financial operations for the bank. And I ended up here just because I helped the bank develop the first proof of concept of RPA in finance. And then prior to that, I was at Accenture in their financial services strategy practice. Before that, at Progressive in finance, and before that in Bain. So I've kind of been through the journey that many of you are probably going through, and excited to be talking about it today.
That's super cool. You're a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I think it's super interesting. When people start to talk about, I launched the first, and you had to go through and sort of scrape your knuckles a little bit, learn things along the way. To your point, many people are still getting started. Today we're talking about sort of advanced uses, leveraging AI, but I can't wait to dive into your experience and your recommendations and insights for our audience. Um, so with that said, let's cut to the chase. What gets you excited about generative AI plus automation, the power of the two combined?
Well, I think what's really interesting is it's really supports really the evolution of the finance function itself. I mean, finance years and years ago was really very much a transactional accounting function, and now finance is really not only in charge of obviously ensuring accuracy of the financials, but now often is responsible for corporate strategy, for many times the digital transformation programs across the company, and so as a result, now technologies like generative AI, in combination with intelligent automation, are really enabling finance to do a lot more than they could have in the past.
Yeah, that's it's the transformation of the different functions, I think, is really interesting as we talk more broadly about digital transformation as a whole across the enterprise, right? So from a functional perspective, and their sort of traditional, I think it's fascinating. Micah, as just mentioned, you've been traveling the world lately. You just got back from London. With regards to the finance function and finance processes, what are you hearing?
Yeah, we've been working as a part of this Pathfinder program that we've been doing. We've worked with a lot of financial institutions from most recently Australia. In London, we were working with an organization that's doing a lot of work around audit. The things that we hear a lot from those in finance are that they have to keep up with all of these new introduced regulations. So there might be new FINRA regulations or things like that to come out. And, it doesn't exactly, when those new regulations come out, they don't come out with instructions of exactly how this should be applied within your organization. And so a lot of organizations are struggling with how do they, uh, you know, stay in tune with what these regulations are requiring of them, while not having to just hire thousands and thousands of people to manually review a bunch of work. And so that's where I think it's really interesting for a lot of financial organizations to start to incorporate generative AI capabilities within their workloads and within their processes to help them to understand where do we really need to get humans involved and where can we take a lift from these generative AI capabilities. And so, yeah, I think those are the most exciting. Those are the kind of things that we're hearing over and over again of people wanting to understand how they can really keep up with what they need to be doing and not necessarily have to hire hundreds and hundreds of more people to do that.
Yeah, and it's
And
interesting
to
to
that,
say that because finance is typically like the last budget function that gets additional budget. So they're constantly being asked to do more with less. And so I think that's why this technology is really taken off within the finance world.
there was a recent article published by the Wall Street Journal, where they reported that 50% of CFOs are prioritizing cost management. Um, as and additionally, 84% plan to implement automation and digital technologies to free up employees for more valuable tasks. And because probably too, it's not just that, but there's, we have this productivity gap, we have this skills gap. So even finding the talent to do it, even if you had the budget, is also a challenge, right? So can talk about cost management from the approach from the office of the CFO a little bit, and automation and intelligent automation in that context.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, cost management has clearly always been a major focus for most companies, not only within the finance function, but often they're stewards for operational improvement and cost reduction initiatives across the company. And certainly, as we get into the current economic environment, as we have been in for the past couple of years, it's even more top of mind. But I think what's exciting about the technology and intelligent automation is that it clearly not only drives down costs, and maybe that's why finance organizations initially look at the technology, but increasingly they find significant additional benefits around, for example, increasing the timeliness of information for business decisions, accelerating the close. I find a lot of organizations say, sure, I'd like to be more operational efficient, but anything I can do to strengthen controls and automate a lot of the controls that are sitting in, Excel to make sure that I drive more accuracy is important. And then, as I mentioned before, and as you said, that there's really a shortage of talent, both, not only driven by limited budget, but frankly, in the current environment, it's just hard finding people. And so, particularly when you get at crunch times where you have peak demand, like month-end close, this really frees up resources to do a lot of the more strategic analytical work, as opposed to creating reports or sourcing data.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's a
like the
great
point you
point.
mentioned. I like the point you mentioned about making decisions with better, more real-time data. And I think even beyond generative AI exclusively, we want to think about the automations that we're creating and that are executing, and they emit a certain amount of like data exhaust. And what are we doing with that exhaust, and what are we, actionably taking decisions on to improve the way that we're doing work, right? So every automation that I have has the ability to touch a lot of data. And am I just letting that expire when the bot run ends, or am I saving that to make better decisions in the future? And I think a lot of organizations would be benefited by starting to think about like, I have all this data in multiple places. If there was a way I could bring it together, what decisions could I be making otherwise that I'm not making today?
Yeah, that's absolutely a big challenge. I mean, all organizations, usually the issue isn't lack of data, it's frankly almost too much data. So it's trying to take all that information and be able to figure out what are the right sources, what are the accurate sources, what are the timely, and then most importantly, how do I access that to actually make business decisions and drive operations? So that's usually the biggest challenge, and that's where, again, technology can help.
And I want to take a quick moment to remind everyone this is an interactive conversation. I see a few hands up to join the conversation, but those of you in the finance function or automating for finance, love to hear your thoughts. What are you automating? What challenges do you have? What do you want to automate? Leveraging generative AI. So we'll get you guys in a moment, but keep those hands up, and we'll see if we can't bring you in. So with regards to, again, sort of the generative AI conversation, um, actually, I want to circle back real quick because we're talking about the data thing, and I think we've done a few of these now, and across functions and across the people we've been talking to, this idea of sort of data cleanliness, because you need good data to make good decisions, right? And so, can you mention in the uncertain economic environments, dynamic environments, not only do you need the good data, you need to make decisions quickly, likely, right? Um, so this is a common thread that I've seen. What are customers doing to sort of leverage automation to manage their data? Give us some use cases or some processes you're seeing the application.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some obvious ones. So, for example, financial planning and analysis. So much of that function is really around sourcing data, right? To ultimately create management reports and provide that information to the business. So we see a lot of work around sourcing that data from the appropriate approved data sources, and therefore being able to take that data in an automated fashion and then spend a lot more time, analyzing the information rather than creating reports or data sourcing. So that's certainly one. Another big challenge in finance, frankly, is that finance rarely is the source of the data, right? They're aggregating data from all the various sources across the company. So the information they're either reporting internally or externally is only as good as those data sources. So as a result, traditionally automation has really been focused on a lot of those things to ensure data accuracy, such as reconciliation. So that's a very labor-intensive process. I definitely encourage organizations, first and foremost, use your automated capabilities built within your ERP system or your automated reconciliation system. But for those more complex ones, this provides you the ability to ensure that the information in your general ledger matches that in your source systems. And nowadays, organizations are heavily using intelligent automation to do those reconciliations.
Awesome. Hey, guys, you want to take a quick question from the audience?
Sure.
Let's go to, how about, is it Chandra Muli?
Hi.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me here. And yes, it is Chandra Morley. My question is on the problem of hallucination, or the generative AI is making up facts whenever they're in use, and specifically in the finance space, this could be very misleading or could provide information that's not accurate, which is very important in the finance field. What are your suggestions? How do you look at mitigating these issues?
Yeah, I can take that. And today, so far, we've been talking more about maybe traditional intelligent automation. But as you get to generative AI, I mean, that's absolutely probably the number one concern, right? And it's true across all businesses and all functions, but particularly in finance, because as you said, I mean, at the end of the day, the information absolutely has to be accurate. And so it really excites me about where the technology is going. And we've even seen announcements, for example, from Google related to this, is the ability to, rather than just using generative AI to go out to public data and public models and come back with information, is really the ability to now use your own internal private data. So within your own corporation or your own models to come up with those answers. And therefore, you're going to have a lot more confidence that the information is coming back, for example, around your financial performance or what have you, is accurate, as opposed to those going to those general public models.
I'll say two other things in addition to that. Number one is we would want to see these kind of capabilities embedded with something like what we're calling Copilot, or it was previously called Ari, where you've got a human in the loop to validate and verify some of these generative solutions that may be coming up. So if we're going to send, let's say, an email to a customer, we want to have someone at least have a set of eyes on it first to make sure we're not sending something that may be totally inappropriate or totally misleading. The other thing I'd say is that with ChatGPT specifically, and this doesn't exactly address the answer, but I think is around the same area. When you call their API, you do have the ability to set what they call a temperature. And that temperature can be set very low, where the model will be more focused and coherent and give a more conservative output. Or you can make it be a little bit more creative. And if you put that value up to like a 0.7 or a 1, it's a value from 0 to 1, basically. But if you put it at a higher value, it's going to be more creative, and you're going to get more of that, like, hey, this actually isn't correct kind of stuff coming out of it. So depending on your use case, there may be times where it's appropriate to crank that value up or to turn it down. And as a plug back to our bot games that I talked about earlier, you will actually have to set that temperature to get one of your bot games challenges to work correctly. So that's all I'm going to say on that for right now, as far as the bot game stuff, because we're still testing these and keeping them under wraps. But I have struggled with one of the solutions for a little bit, and the temperature was the key factor. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Mike, I guess two things. One is I like how you're throwing in little bot games Easter eggs there.
Yeah, exactly.
The other is, I mean, I completely agree with your first point around, I think, especially in the early days of Gen AI, I mean, you really need some type of human in the loop review rather than just leveraging the technology and boom, it instantly goes out to, customers or investors. But that being said, I do think it's a great tool, right? Because, for example, if you're developing management discussion analysis or forecast variance analysis, hey, to run the tool again, assuming it's on internal data, and come up with a preliminary readout, and then being able to use that to adapt and edit, I think is a great example of how it's more likely to be used rather than just you take the answer that comes out of it and immediately push it out.
I think we talked a little bit about that previously, and it keeps coming up, which is this idea of, we're not talking full autonomy here necessarily, right? The human in the loop aspect with like the automation copilot that we have. I know personally from my experience, it's been a game changer, right? Again, I've said this before, as a non-technologist, the ability to leverage the power of intelligent automation and generative AI, just in my small function and role, has been an absolute game changer. And to your point, I can, set a query in ChatGPT just sort of for fun or whatever. And oftentimes it's not going to be exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm talking about very simple applications. When you're talking about the complexities and restrictions and needs for finance, to your point, Ken, the ability to have that human in the loop via the single pane of glass, if you will, from the automation copilot, is going to be invaluable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get really excited about the technology in terms of how it's evolving because, historically, traditional like process automation was, unattended, meaning you run it in the background and maybe it does something overnight, you come back and pick it up, right? Which can do some great things. But if now, where we see the technology moving with things like Copilot are to really be able to interact with a bot. So, I've seen examples, for example, if you look at, hey, what are the top 5 tasks you do every day? Create customized buttons for those. Click a button, it instantly pops up a screen that says, hey, this is the data you need. Some of those fields are already pre-populated because the bots have gone out and got the data. Click a button, does it, the next couple tasks, comes back to it. This is the next thing you need to do. I mean, I think that's a great application because realistically, there aren't that many end-to-end processes that you're entirely automating with intelligent automation. So it's really more that interactive aspect. And the other thing that really excites me, and again, this is very recent within, for example, technologies like our automation copilot, are embedded automation. So what I mean by that is, most people spend most of their time working within one of their core applications. So in finance could be your GL, like SAP or Oracle, or any type of ERP function. And so you really don't want to have to go out of the ERP you're using to then implement, bots or intelligent automation technology. And so this concept of embedded automation, where you could take, for example, those 5 buttons I just described, but instead the look and feel would be as if you're still within your ERP and you wouldn't even know that you're actually, triggering intelligent automation is really exciting because, again, it just makes it a lot easier to leverage the technology while you're doing your day-to-day job.
Yeah, and I remember when, Micah, you did the demo at Imagine with the Pixie bricks, but also just embedded in general. I just think that's super exciting.
Yeah. And so let's talk about a really specific example where we could combine something like that human in the loop with generative AI capabilities. And Ken, actually, I don't know if we talked about this. I used to work at a financial services organization before I came to Automation Anywhere. And one of the things that we had to deal with was obviously keeping up with FINRA regulations. And there is a specific FINRA regulation that's 4530 that states that customer complaints reported to a financial institution must be reported within 15 days of close of the end of the calendar quarter. And that's one thing to keep up with. If it's like, hey, we have this one form that you fill out. If you have a complaint, just let us know and go ahead and fill that out, right? It's another thing when you think about all the different channels that you have customer communication going on, and especially for like an organization that's providing financial services, maybe you have an advisor that you reach out to. You could have complaints that are coming through that channel. You could have complaints that are going to customer service. You could have complaints going to people by their email address, things like that. And it can be overwhelming for an organization just to have like an army of people to be able to review and evaluate all of that communication. And so I think it's a good example of where something like generative AI could come in, because you're able to evaluate all of this communication. You can flag those complaints quite easily, and then you can show those to a user, only a subset of whatever you think is like, hey, these are actually complaints, confirm yes or no. And then that user can make the determination through, the RE user interface or the Copilot user interface on exactly, hey, is this a complaint? Yes or no? Is this something we need to follow up on? Yes or no? Is there an appropriate group we should route this to? All those kind of things. And you could route all of that from one central place, as opposed to like every single team having their own way of dealing with these complaints and the different channels that they monitor.
Yeah, I think it's a great example because when you're dealing with handling complaints, which again, it's a frankly a big issue across industries, and we see the same use cases and the same financial regulatory implications in like the airline industry, but in banking as well. And the challenge is that, right, if you have multiple products across multiple systems, trying to just get an understanding of what your historical transactions have been with the company, much less figuring out what you need to do to address the complaint, is very challenging. So yeah, leveraging the technology to give you basically a summary of that history it can be extremely valuable.
That's a great use case. We see a bunch of, I think, some bot builds we've seen even submitted from our developer ecosystem on LinkedIn around this customer complaint management, sentiment analysis, leveraging automation, leveraging our platform with generative AI to do that sentiment analysis, aggregate, respond, etc. I think it's really, really great. And as we all know, people love to complain, so there's probably a lot of them out there. Hey, guys, I want to take another question from our audience. So, Felipe, are you out there?
Hello, everyone. This has been a great conversation. I've really been enjoying it. So thank you all for having this room. I'm glad I found you all. I'm in banking, so for me, a lot of the stuff that you've been sharing has been very relevant. But I wanted to ask you a little bit of a different question because I've been introducing AI, for the last couple months now, and we've been using it for very practical reasons. To your point, you just mentioned, customer complaints, rewriting a response to a customer complaint and running it through ChatGPT, or even with marketing plans, or doing things for employee coaching and counseling. So the practical uses are great, but I'm curious as to, right now we're going through a core conversion. And we have butchered our previous systems in the past so badly that the data isn't clean. So the point you made about clean data is so important. And with all the opportunities to promote the products and services in the banking industry, how do you think AI will take it to the next level? Because right now we're targeting, obviously trying to target people and our customers depending on their life moments, depending on where they might be with a maybe retirement or marriage or high balances, and reaching them out. And I know in the future with plugins we'll have a lot more capability, but I'm just curious, what do you see as the next level of where AI is going to help the banking industry with the products and services, either from a marketing standpoint or a sales standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about that. And I know, even though we're talking today about finance and accounting, it's hard to separate like finance and accounting from financial services, which obviously has a lot of financial functions. And so I think, the technology and the leveraging AI is clearly, it's going to include Gen AI, but it's going to go much further beyond that, right? And that's where you see even today a lot of usage around this machine learning, et cetera. So I think in the product, in particular the sales space, I think the big opportunities are really where I think the industry has always been trying to go, right? Is trying to increase, they call often share of wallet of a customer, right? And so I think the key is leveraging AI so you can understand exactly what product or service would be of most need to a particular customer at any point in time, right? So the ability to scan across not only all the information you have about the customer within your organization, but then also, leveraging public available, not spooky data outside to be able to therefore offer products and services that customers need particularly when they're interacting, for example, with customer service about something else or what have you. I think it's going to be particularly valuable. We also see a lot of opportunities just in terms of the core, not only banking, but in insurance and other industries around, for example, like fraud detection or collections within finance, et cetera. So I think there are a lot more opportunities, especially with, again, more as you start getting to machine learning, deep learning models beyond Gen AI itself.
I think too, you talked a little bit from the marketing and sort of sales side, which is more my background, but I think this idea of know your customer, and not so much KYC like regulations, but just being able to triangulate on what that customer needs. And Philippe, you sort of mentioned that, whether it's a moment in life, the demographics, et cetera. I'm of the mind that I do want my products and services to know who I am on many levels, and not send me stuff that's irrelevant. And I think right now I still get a bunch of irrelevant things to my moment in time, whatever that might be. So I think leveraging the AI and the data to sort of, like I said, triangulate, and figure out what the buying moment is, or what the more importantly, what the service or solution I need at that point in time would be hugely helpful and help convert. Micah, what are your thoughts?
I think the more that we can put data together, I think to our conversation earlier, the better we can be at marketing appropriately and identifying those moments in time that maybe were not self-evident. So, for example, if we know that Micah Smith is a customer, and we know Micah Smith's Twitter account, and we know Micah Smith's Facebook account or whatever, we can go and look for those kind of things that Micah's talking about to try to understand where is Micah in life and what does that mean for our financial institution. So if I'm going online and I'm complaining about, let's say, another financial institution or a credit card that I'm dealing with, or I'm having issues with customer service, that's an opportunity for someone who's actually monitoring that data and making use of it and trying to massage all this data from multiple sources all in one place to directly reach out to me and be like, hey, we know you're a customer. We'd love to service you in a different way. Have you tried this credit card, right? And that's an opportunity for me where I'm frustrated by some customer experience. And now all of a sudden, someone who I'm already working with is coming to help me out. I think those are going to be really interesting things. Probably a little bit scary too, right? Because if I start to share too much on Twitter and all of a sudden I'm getting this very targeted, very messaged content coming my way. But I think making use of all of that data in really interesting ways will become the future of how that marketing and how that tailoring looks.
Well, to your point, right? Like I expect now I'm going to get a bunch of retargeted ads on Facebook and Instagram as we get off the call for new banking and credit cards.
Absolutely.
But kind of that point, right? It's a very broad, like, hey, you mentioned this keyword or you mentioned this thing. I'm going to just send you all this stuff. Well, I think the opportunity is to really dive into that conversation and process, again, sentiment, intent, nature of the conversation. If I say, oh, we should go bowling this weekend, it doesn't mean I'm trying to buy some bowling shoes or a bowling ball. But I'm going to get ads for bowling shoes.
Yeah, we see in a lot of industries like products being tailored based on AI and what your specific needs. So, like another example, and we'll probably have to come back to finance and accounting after this, but another example is like in insurance, where you're hearing this concept, a totally different word embedded here, but embedded insurance meaning, very specific insurance offering for a very specific need. So, for example, if I book a trip somewhere, right, then you might get an offering saying, hey, would you like insurance for your expensive guitar for the next 2 weeks while you're overseas? And so the ability to underwrite that, offer that, determine when you need that, can leverage a lot of AI technologies and a lot of intelligent automation to provide a very tailored offering as opposed to your traditional, here's your homeowner insurance that covers everything you own.
No, that makes total sense. I've got a helicopter flying over my house, so I apologize for the background noise here, guys. So going back to this idea of even if we're talking about this customization of knowing the customer, right? This also speaks, circling back to this idea of security, privacy, compliance. And we also made mention of like the model gardens, like, the recent announcements from Google, for instance. Let's talk a little bit more about that and what we see happening over the landscape, over the next month. I mean, things are happening so fast; it could be over the next weeks. But give us some insights on the importance of the technology, but in the platforms themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's not only the security aspect, which is obviously absolutely critical, but it's also again the accuracy. Because at the end of the day, the reason why there are so many financial controls are to ensure the accuracy and integrity of information. And so again, the power of automation is it's going to enable you to go to the appropriate sources for information, to do the appropriate calculations that are required, followed in a compliant manner. Obviously, it helps that obviously all the automations are within a enterprise grade centralized control room from a security standpoint. But I think the ability to ensure and be able to rely upon the fact that the automation is going to leverage the appropriate data to give you the appropriate answer, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and to the Google announcement that was made a couple weeks ago, and their foundation model, I think it's going to be really interesting when people can start to do some of this self-training. I think Ken was alluding to this a bit earlier, but if I'm going to generate a report on a asset, right? Maybe it's Apple or something like that, a stock, then I don't want to just like generate one that comes from the entirety of the internet that would be generic to what anyone else could create. But I want one that's created off of our way of thinking or our way of talking about financial assets. And so um, that's when I think being able to train on top of an existing model will enable me to really customize the responses that are coming out of it and the style and the way that we talk about things. This gets back to the marketing. This also gets back to the way that we produce financial analysis. And I think that will be really interesting going forward with these model gardens and being able to run many of these models within a private space, either on AWS or Google or Azure. You can do this with ChatGPT today. That's when you're starting to be able to maybe submit some more sensitive data to the model and know that it's not going to use that for retraining and learning purposes. And I think that will be much more important for a lot of organizations who are starting to use this for more real production type work and real commercial work instead of me just asking, like, hey, write a poem, which I couldn't care less about it using that data to retrain. But if it's like, hey, this is a bunch of our, financial data, help us to understand where we have some areas that we could make improvements on, then you start to like get a little bit more sensitive. And there's already been several situations where I think it was Amazon had employees who had put code into ChatGPT, and then part of that code or part of that logic had actually been exposed elsewhere. And that's no bueno if you're really concerned about data privacy.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think the idea of like as you called it, I guess, a model garden, or just again being able to uh, leverage Chat GPT and Gen AI within your own private models and private data is absolutely going to change and really um, change the way that businesses think and use the technology. And that's frankly, why it's a barrier right now, right? I mean, I hear of more companies coming out with restrictions about the use of Gen AI because of concerns that we're talking about. Whereas going forward, as I mentioned before, I mean, the applications within finance, particular, right? So creating MD&A or management discussion analysis that you see in quarterly or annual reports, the ability to actually come up with a preliminary variance analysis about what are the different drivers of variance versus your budget or forecast. As you said, Micah, the ability to identify potential operational improvements. And so there are lots of great applications of the technology, but absolutely you have to have confidence that A, you're using accurate data, and B, that the data is not going to go outside your company.
All great points. I just want to get back to the fact that for those of you who don't know, Micah is a prolific writer of poetry. Look for his AI-driven poems on Amazon and at your local bookstore. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, it's pretty serious stuff, but super interesting. So we're talking about some advanced use cases. We're talking about leveraging the latest and greatest in technology. Ken, you recently posted a blog on our website, and in there, you have some key steps for folks in finance executives, and to sort of get started, or sort of a baseline for what to consider to get started and to be successful with AI intelligent automation. Talk to us about those.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is really, again, trying to figure out what are the opportunities to apply the technology, and particularly early on, identify some quick wins. Now, of course, in order to be able to do that, first of all, you have to understand, what technologies are out there and what their capabilities are. I don't mean only Gen AI, but any AI capabilities. So sort of staying out there, reading, even experimenting with the technologies is, I think, key. But then once you find ones that are that seem interesting and applicable to a particular business challenge you have, I think coming up with some quick wins, and hey, some things just won't work out. Moving on to the next one, just as part of the innovation process is key. And so continue to look for where you can apply it. I think another key is really ensuring that you have the appropriate foundation to really scale your automation, again, whether it's Gen AI or other AI. So having the appropriate tools. Of course, obviously, a little bias that Automation Success Platform is the right one, but whatever the tools are, right? Make sure you have the appropriate tool set, enterprise grade, et cetera. But then, equally important is, beyond the tools and the use cases, are ensuring you have a right sort of support organization. So, often organizations form, like a center of excellence or COE. I think some combination typically works between centralized, where you have a small COE centralized to help, educate the organization what the technologies are, help encourage, using appropriate standards from a development standpoint, and then really appointing leads within each of the various businesses or functions. Since obviously the businesses themselves are going to have a better idea what some of their own business challenges are, to come up with a pipeline of ideas that then jointly or in more of a citizen development model can be generated is really key. So again, it's sort of educating yourself, identifying those quick wins, experimenting, and then making sure you have a org to support that. I think are a couple of key items.
Great recommendations, thanks, Ken. And just to plug again, shameless plug time. I need some music or something for when I do this. Next week we'll be diving into each of those topics, whether it's citizen development, whether it's prioritization, and planning for scale and making sure you do have that infrastructure, as well as sort of product capabilities and whatnot. Also reskilling in the learning environment. So tons of great stuff next week at the Pathfinder Community Space Camp. Do try to attend. Register today. There's a link in the comments. Gents, this has been fun. It's been enlightening as usual. It's always a pleasure to talk to the both of you. Thank you so much. To our audience, thank you for joining as well. Micah, we're heading into a weekend. The weather is great here in California, finally. What do you got going on?
I'm going to leave you with a joke I've been working on. You ready? I think this is going to hit home.
Did AI do this joke? Did AI do this joke?
I'm still a capable individual, okay? All right. Automation Anywhere, ChatGPT, and a blockchain walk into a bar. I don't know the rest of the joke, but it's decentralized and probably has a probabilistic ending that we can all infer, right? Killer joke. 3 people got that. Machine learning references all over the place. I'll see myself out.
And with that, people, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much, Ken, for joining us. We will see you soon.
I'm speechless after the joke.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well done, Micah. All right. Cheers, you all. Thank you.